Hey everyone, this time on Tim Talks Audio, we're making masters that much faster and easier. We're checking out Safari Pedals, Noam's mastering console. Hi, if it's your first time to the channel, my name is Tim. I'm a recording and mixing engineer, and I just want to make things easier for you. Today we're going over Safari Pedals' brand new plugin, Noam's mastering console. And I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly, but this is based off of actual hardware in the guys at Safari Pedals, their home studios or their professional studios. They're mastering analog gear that's in front of them for the projects that they work on. They have taken that chain and made it into a very easy plugin for all of us to use. So today we're going to check it out, go over all the controls and how it sounds and how quickly you can master a track. Let's dive into the DAW. Okay, so here we are inside of the session, and it may look a little different because we're on the project page. This is a part of Studio One. This is not the normal song page. This is projects. This is the mastering side where you can sequence your entire album and do all things like that. Instead of getting into all of those details, let's talk about Noam's mastering console. So you can see a whole bunch of different controls here, and we're going to start with the controls. If you want to jump ahead to the audio examples, use the chapters down below. So let's do like we usually do. Let's start from the top and we'll work our way down. So obviously we can click on the manual button here and it'll bring us to the web page for the manual. Here's your master bypass right here, preset browser, auto gain on or off, and turning on oversampling, just toggle buttons here or there. And then, of course, you have a blend control in the top right. This is very standard of Safari Pedals type plugins. Now let's get into the bulk of things and moving down. Let's go left to right, top to bottom in that order. So you can see on the left-hand side at the top, we've got our filter section. So we can roll off anything below 20 hertz, anything lower than human hearing, because what this will do is make sure that the rest of the processes aren't trying to process audio that we can't hear anyway. So it gives us that headroom because it's not trying to apply things to low frequencies that take lots of energy to compress, EQ, etc., reproduce. To the right of that is your top end. Here is your low pass filter, but this is set at 20,000 hertz, the extreme ends of our human range of hearing at perfect hearing. So we can just roll off the super highs that we can't hear and the super lows that we can't hear, giving us more headroom because we're not trying to process those frequencies that we can't hear. And it's adjustable. You can do 12 dB per octave on that filter or something that's more heavily sloped and cut off by minus 18 dB per octave or all the way up to minus 24. So gentle, a little bit more, even more like cutting off your top or bottom end frequencies. Underneath that is the master input control. If you just need more signal going in to maybe drive into some of these things that we're going to go to in a moment, you can push your input even harder. And then if it's maybe too hot coming in, you could always roll that back. And then if you use the auto gain, like we already went over, if you're going and pushing in, you might notice on the right-hand side, the output is just matching in an inverse sort of way. You push in on the input, the output drops down, and of course, the opposite direction as well. Underneath that is the saturation section. And first you have the on or off button right here to engage that tube style saturation. And you can do a little bit more filtering from the top bit here. That's why it says saturation filter. You can roll off your low end, getting saturated. So you're like not going to saturate things below, let's say 100 hertz here or below 300 hertz. You're just taking it out of that section and you're not going to be saturating the super lows or the super highs based on your cutoff up here. If you put it to flat, nothing's happening. Same thing on bottom. And then 80, 100, 300, 400, or excuse me, 450 for the low end, 1K, 3K, 5K, and 16K for the top end. And as you hover over controls, you'll notice in the middle, underneath the VU meters, it tells you exactly what you're hovering over. Right now, saturation, low pass filter, flat. So then when we come down underneath to the saturation controls, we can see how much saturation are we getting. Are we going to saturate the heck out of it? Or are we just going to get like a little bit of tubey goodness? And then in the middle, it's your mix knob, and it says it right underneath, but it goes between clean and hot. It's exactly what you think. It's the mix knob, how much of this saturation is blended into the signal that's coming into this unit. And then after that, we have level. This allows you to actually push a little bit of extra level with the saturation. It's not really compression because that's not what we're doing, but we are increasing levels because we're increasing harmonics, and it almost feels a little compressy. There's no compression going on in this plugin unless you're using something that we're going to get into later on. But the level helps you make back some of that level, and you can kind of just push things a little bit. We'll get to that in the audio examples. You'll hear what I'm talking about. Now let's move to the middle section. Starting at the top, VU meters, and in between is an input or output. It's what are you metering, the input levels or the output levels. And then we said already underneath is the helper bar. This is where the pop-ups happen. Underneath that is a Baxendall style EQ, where it's just going to do a shelve for 40 hertz and below, or 12K and above. That's all it's doing. You can't adjust those frequencies. All you can do is either push more of them or pull them out. And you can turn that on or off with the BAX button in the middle as well, just like we saw with the tube saturation button on the saturation section. Underneath the BAX EQ, you have your mid-side matrix. Again, toggle on or off if you want to use this, but this allows you to rebalance your mid signals and your side signals. So it does a little bit of MS processing inside the unit itself, but maybe you just want things to have a sense of being wider. You could do that here by either pushing the sides a little bit more and bringing them out and increasing the volume, or the same thing is by decreasing your mid, which is essentially the same thing. One thing is getting louder because something else is quieter. It's all the same in this instance, but how you use these will help you balance out your projects. Then on the right-hand side, starting at the top, we have a built-in de-esser. Maybe you're pushing some of that 12K, but it's getting a little too sizzly, but it's got some sparkle that you like. You can elect to turn on, which by default is off, the de-esser. So you can select your frequency with the bottom control here from all the way down to 4,750 hertz or 4.7K, we'll call it, all the way up to 19K and anything in between. And the amount of de-essing is here. So this is essentially a mix control for the de-esser. And then the amount of reduction is this meter up on the top right. So you can see it's a much smaller scale down to -6. In mastering, you're probably not doing as much de-essing as you would in, let's say, mixing. But you have the option here. If something gets sizzly, but you like a sparkle, you can balance those things out. We already talked about the output control because it's the same thing as the input control, just the output. And then underneath is a clipper, a built-in clipper, and you can turn it on or you can turn it off. And this is just lobbing off those tops, making sure that you're getting a little bit of clipping, soft clipping, before your final stage of limiting, and you're just kind of helping the limiter do its thing. Okay, that's all the controls. Now let's get into how this thing sounds. And I have 3 different songs for us. They are 3 totally different style songs. Up first is a slower pop style track that I got from the multi-track site. Had fun mixing yesterday, and then I went ahead and used it for this example. Then I have a punk rock style song right here in the middle, and then I have a jazz instrumental style song at the end. Some of these songs have already been released, but these are the unmastered versions that I reached out to some friends, and I'll put links in the description and on the video, so if you want to go support them, please go do that. So let's go back to our first song and really go into how this thing sounds. And this is all of my settings for this song. I had to push the input a little bit more because I just kind of wanted to. I did some super filtering, something very gentle on the top, a little bit more on the bottom end. I didn't change any of the filters for the saturation because I'm not doing a ton. I do have my mix kind of down and the amounts isn't really crazy. A little BAX EQ, little top end boost, and a little low end. Look at this, 0.5 dB low end cut. I use the mid-side matrix, push the sides up a little bit more just to make it a little brighter, a little wider, a little more exciting. I did turn the de-esser on, but I didn't use it. It's still at 0, but I tried it on. I do have the clipper on, but the clipper is barely doing anything. This is not like a really kind of clippy, necessary style song. And I just kind of volume matched it for us so we can really compare what it's doing as a before and after and not get tricked by volume. So let's get into how this thing sounds. I'm going to start with it in bypass, and then after a couple bars, I'll drop it in, and there shouldn't be a major volume change, but the feeling of the song should, and that's what we're going for.
Aim for two, tell me, babe, how do you feel? 'Cause I notice that you seem so real. And tell me, what is it like to dance in?
So extraordinarily subtle. I'm doing a little bit of saturation. You can hear the low mids kind of just fluff in a little bit more, and it goes into more of those mids and upper mids as well. Like we said, we're not doing a bunch of filtering on it, so I do have this saturation across the entire spectrum, but there's a little bit of it, so it's not this massive like distortion. It's saturation. It's just a little bit of harmonics to help fill things in. And then we volume matched it this way. There's not this huge bump when we're going from unmastered to mastered through mastering console. So now let's actually push it and see what this thing can do. Because I have auto gain off, I'm going to go to the output, and you can see I'll start driving this and we can get some real level out of this. I do have the, here's the LUFS meter is going to be down on the right-hand side over here. So let's see what we can do.
Aim for two, tell me, babe, how do you feel? 'Cause I notice that you seem so real. And tell me, what is it like to dance in the rain under pale?
So as you saw, we can get some really decent volume and push out of this plugin. The last thing that you'll need to do, because this is just parts of the mastering process to enhance the sound, but that final thing of making sure that we don't go into clipping like we saw in our example here is just throw in a limiter after this to just like, hey, here's where you can't go past because this is going to live on a streaming platform, or you just need to stay within this range. That's why we're limiting. So follow this up with even just your stock limiter and you'll be totally safe. I jumped over to the punk style track. This is Staying Home from Springwood's Electric Luau. It's a band that I've been recording and working with. This is one of the singles that they already have out. This is just the mix, and you can see I mixed this one pretty hot and I did some kind of heavy processing in it, and it sounds completely different from our other example. So with it off, the track sounds like this.
I just wanna stay.
So as you can see, it's already way different from our first track. Big heavy guitars, big drums, lots of vocals, ukulele, very different. Here's all of my settings for the mastering console, and let's take a little before and after listen. We're going to start with it off.
I just wanna stay at home with you and sit on the couch and watch a season or two. Oh, 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 I don't wanna go. Please don't make me go to the real world. To the
So very different. And let's just quickly go over what I did. I now actually use the filters for the saturation section, and I'm using more saturation, but still have the amount that is being saturated. It's a blend. You have to blend it and you have to work with it. Maybe you leave it at 100%, but your saturation is only at like 1%. You're not really pushing a lot. So it is balancing how much you're doing and how much it's within the entire track. So I pushed a little bit more here. I have the mix is much higher. The top end is not getting filtered. The low end is. We're using the BAX EQ to kind of shelve off a little bit of those super lows and those super highs. And I even did a little bit of a rebalance with the mid sides because the sides were a little much for me. So I just kind of brought them in and reined it in with the side control and the MS matrix. I'm doing a little bit of de-essing. This was a bright track, and I just needed to kind of rein it in. I mixed it bright. Blame me. It's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm using the clipper on here, even though we can see in the original track if we're just using our eyes, which we shouldn't do. But I think in the mix, I probably did that, and I don't need this one on. There you go. And then you saw during the AB, I just needed to recheck the volume to match that a little better. Let's move on to our last song and all of its settings. So here is Strolling on Park Avenue. This is from Paul Guarino. You can check out this song also already out there, but this is the unmastered version. And I went a little bit more extreme with this, but you'll see what's going on. Here is the track in question, and everything is bypassed. So that's what I did with this track. I felt like the mid was overpowering the sides and everything could just feel wider. And as I dropped the mid down, I've done 0 boost to the sides, but I just brought the mids kind of in a little, especially when that lead sax hits. It was really pokey for me. So I just reined everything in, pulled that mid in. It's something flubby on the low end. I cut about almost a dB on the low end. Small moves in mastering. And I did almost 2 dB, which is really a lot for the top ends to just help those cymbals shine. Very aggressive style filtering on the top and bottom. Again, there was like some super lows and flubbiness that I wanted to get rid of. I wanted to make sure it wasn't hitting the saturation and, we weren't like exciting the highs too much. Very subtle amounts down here. And then I don't use the de-esser. I'm not using the clipper. I'm just actually boosting the output to get a little bit more volume because I just needed a little bit more volume. It's a lower style track. So there it is. That is Noam's mastering console from our friends over at Safari Pedals. Firstly, thank you to Safari Pedals for sending this over and letting us get an early look at it so that you guys can check it out because it's available right now. So use the link down in the description. Go pick up a copy for yourself. This is an affiliate link. A little bit will come back to help the channel, and it's always appreciated whenever that happens. So thank you for clicking on that. Thank you for watching, and happy mastering. I'll see you next time. Take care.